Canterville Chase, everyone told him he was doing a very foolish thing, as there was no doubt at all that the place was haunted. Indeed, Lord Canterville himself, who was a man of the most punctilious honor, had felt it his duty to mention the fact to Mr. Otis when they came to discuss terms. "We have not cared to live in the place ourselves," said Lord Canterville, "since my grand aunt, the Dowager Duchess of Bolton, was frightened into a fit, from which she never really recovered, by two skeleton hands being placed on her shoulders as she was dressing for dinner. And I feel bound to tell you, Mr. Otis, that the ghost has been seen by several living members of my family, as well as by the rector of the parish, the Reverend Augustus Dampier, who is a fellow of King's College, Cambridge. After the unfortunate accident to the Duchess, none of our younger servants would stay with us, and Lady Canterville often got very little sleep at night, in consequence of the mysterious noises that came from the corridor and the library." "My lord," answered the minister, "I will take the furniture and the ghost at a valuation. I have come from a modern country where we have everything that money can buy, and with all our spry young fellows painting the old world red and carrying off your best actors and prima donnas, I reckon that if there were such a thing as a ghost in Europe, we'd have it at home in a very short time in one of our public museums, or on the road as a show." "I fear that the ghost exists," said Lord Canterville, smiling, "though it may have resisted the overtures of your enterprising impresarios. It has been well known for 3 centuries, since 1584 in fact, and always makes its appearance before the death of any member of our family." "Well, so does the family doctor for that matter, Lord Canterville. But there is no such thing, sir, as a ghost, and I guess the laws of nature are not going to be suspended for the British aristocracy." "You are certainly very natural in America," answered Lord Canterville, who did not quite understand Mr. Otis's last observation. "And if you don't mind a ghost in the house, it is all right. Only you must remember I warned you." A few weeks after this, the purchase was concluded, and at the close of the season the minister and his family went down to Canterville Chase. Mrs. Otis, who, as Miss Lucretia R. Tappan of West 53D Street, had been a celebrated New York belle, was now a very handsome, middle-aged woman with fine eyes and a superb profile. Many American ladies, on leaving their native land, adopt an appearance of chronic ill health under the impression that it is a form of European refinement, but Mrs. Otis had never fallen into this error. She had a magnificent constitution and a really wonderful amount of animal spirits. Indeed, in many respects, she was quite English, and was an excellent example of the fact that we have really everything in common with America nowadays, except, of course, language. Her eldest son, christened Washington by his parents in a moment of patriotism, which he never ceased to regret, was a fair-haired, rather good-looking young man who had qualified himself for American diplomacy by leading the German at the Newport Casino for 3 successive seasons, and even in London was well known as an excellent dancer. Gardenias and the peerage were his only weaknesses. Otherwise, he was extremely sensible. Miss Virginia E. Otis was a little girl of 15, lithe and lovely as a fawn, and with a fine freedom in her large blue eyes. She was a wonderful Amazon, and had once raced old Lord Bilton on her pony twice round the park, winning by a length and a half just in front of the Achilles statue, to the huge delight of the young Duke of Cheshire, who proposed for her on the spot, and was sent back to Eton that very night by his guardians, in floods of tears. After Virginia came the twins, who were usually called the Star and Stripes, as they were always getting swished. They were delightful boys, and, with the exception of the worthy minister, the only true Republicans of the family. No, my sentence was all right, I think. I wrote memento putae inter quater taxos, said McLeod. Well, what does all that mean? I asked. That's the funny thing, he explained. I don't really know, you see. I couldn't think of anything. Right until just before Samson got to me. Then those words just came into my head from nowhere, and it was very strange. I could see a sort of picture of it in my head. I think it means, remember the well among the 4 trees. When Samson read it, he went quiet for a long time. Then he started to ask me questions about my family and where I came from. Then he let me go. We soon forgot about the lesson and McLeod's strange sentence, because the next day McLeod became ill with a cold, and he didn't come to school for a week. Nothing happened for about a month, until one day when we were, again, writing Latin sentences for Samson. This time, we had to write them on pieces of paper and give them correction. He started looking through them, but when he got to one piece of paper, he turned white and cried out, looking very frightened. He got up and hurried out of the classroom, and we sat there for a long time, wondering what to do. Finally, I got up to have a look at the papers, and the first thing I noticed was that the top one was in red ink. Our school never allowed us to use red ink. It was against the rules. The sentence on the paper said, "Si tu non veneris ad me, ego veniam ad te," which means, if you don't come to me, I will come to you. All the boys looked at it, and they all promised that the sentence was not theirs. To check, I counted the pieces of paper. There were 17 of them, but there were only 16 boys in the class. Where this paper came from, no one could say. I put it in my pocket, and it wasn't until that afternoon that I took it out again. It was completely white, with no sign of the red writing.